Welcome back to the C-Suite. On this segment, we are with Dr. Nancy Zare, and she's going to be talking us how we can really find our perfect match in matching our communication to our buyer's style. This is taking selling to a whole different level, and I'm really excited to have this conversation. So welcome, Dr. Nancy Zare, to the show.
Yeah, Jill, I am excited to be here. Thank you.
I'm excited to have you here because really selling, selling always kind of comes with this, either you love it or you don't like it, but we all have to be doing it in so many different ways in our careers. So really, your background is in psychology. How did you start taking psychology and connecting it to sales?
That's a great question. And it's because of the fact that I personally was not great at sales that I wanted to learn what I could do better. And I want to share with your listeners that there are many definitions for the word selling, but the one that I resonate with most is influencing people to take action. And when you think about influencing people to take action, that opens up a different way of looking at that transaction, that communication. And I believe in having a friendly, warm, natural, courteous conversation like you would with a friend. And that, as a result, is going to take your sales to a whole new level.
And now you have something as well you kind of created, and you talk about it in your book, Compelling Selling, and it's called this a likability system. Can you take us through what that is?
Yeah, there are 5 steps to a likability. And a likability, that's the word like with an A in front of it. A likability, you won't find it in the dictionary because I coined the word. So let me quickly define it for you. It means a skill that raises the perception, thoughts, or feelings within the other person that we're alike. So think about how you could influence somebody when they feel we're alike. You get me. Obviously, they're going to relax, they're going to be more comfortable, trust will build. We need trust for sales. Sales resistance, defensiveness drops away, and that opens the door to doing business together. 5 steps to a likability. One is to recognize that there are actually 4 different ways that people are programmed, hardwired to make decisions, to communicate. The second step is to know your style, and that's because we tend to sell or influence people the way we ourselves have been influenced. The third step is to diagnose the other person's style. If there are 4 styles and you're just one style, you naturally connect only 1 out of 4 times. 75% of the time, there's a mismatch. So you need to know what that style is, because step number 4 is to shift yourself and adjust your communication to match that style. And lastly, the last step is to downplay or discard that part in you that may be rubbing people the wrong way.
But I like how you're saying kind of, I think it was in step 2 where you're talking about really the mismatch in styles. And really, because in your book, you talk about the most common mistake made by 95% of sellers is the inability to adjust their communication style to that of the prospect.
Yes, it's very true that most of us say, in fact, I laugh every time someone says to me, well, everyone thinks like this, or everybody, decides in this way. And that's not true. There are, of course, many different ways that people are actually thinking and programmed to respond. I happen to label them 2, 4, 6, and 8. And I use numbers because they correspond to the number of contacts needed by the decision maker before he or she can make a decision. And that really can make a decision. So that number 2 buyer is very fast. He or she can make a decision in 1 or 2 contacts. They're very quick decision makers, decisive. They go for it. They want it off their plate because they're full of adventure and they want to go on to the next thing. The number 4 buyer takes about 3 or 4 touch points, contacts, before they can make a decision. And that's because they're developing more of a relationship with you, something more personal, a friendship. That number 6 buyer is doing their due diligence. They're finding out what the reputation is of you and your company. And hence, they're looking at the Better Business Bureau or a directory. They're asking colleagues and friends for recommendations. And finally, the number 8 buyer takes about 8, 12 or more contacts because they are literally going very deep, 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 deep into the subject area and learning all they can about what it is you do, and literally the science behind it, the explanation as to why it works.
Mhm. And I remember in our first conversation, like you pegged me right away from my shoes. And it was amazing to hear you tell me, this is your buying style. This is what you like to do. This is how you're going to make decisions. And I thought, whoa, like like, you know me. I felt like I was having this conversation with someone who's known me for years.
Yeah, I'm smiling about that because that is one of the things that I enjoy helping clients do is within a quick minute figuring out with a very strong hypothesis what it is that, the style of the other person. Because as soon as you know that style, you're in a better position to again shift and adjust your communication to match the buyer's style and therefore influence them with more probability that they're going to say yes.
Mhm. And so can you share some tips on really how to really kind of identify when you're talking with someone what their buying style might be?
If I may, I'm going to use vocal qualities. I know that this is one of the areas that many of us are not as good listeners, but it is so telling when you hear somebody who is slow, low, and full of pauses. That's definitely your number 8 buyer. They're very thoughtful, methodical. They are thinking it through. Their pauses are to find the right words. Whereas your number 6 buyer, they are slower and lower, but they're moderate and they have inflection, but they're very formal, speak in full sentences and complete paragraphs. Your number 4 buyers, very chatty and talkative. And notice that I've speeded up my voice and volume, but they draw out syllables and it sounds like music when they talk. And the number 2 buyer is so fast and so quick that it's bullet, bullet, bullet point because they want to get everything in and very directive and commanding. And so they're very fast with loud volume. There are real differences in how people speak, and those differences are coming from their inborn style.
Now, what would you say to someone who may be listening to this and thinking, oh, well, you're now going to shift your style to match your buyer's needs, and that's inauthentic, and you're really not influencing in a very authentic way?
I am so glad you brought that up because that is definitely a question I get asked frequently. And for example, the number 2 seller who is very fast and wants things done really quickly, when they recognize the fact that that quickness is turning other people off and they really want the sale because they're very competitive, then that's their motivation authentically to shift. Whereas the number 4 buyer, what motivates them is they want to connect with people person to person. And so the best way you can serve your buyer is to shift. Well, that's very authentic for them. And again, can you see the pattern? So the very things that motivate somebody to be different can be used to actually authentically make those changes.
Mm. And it sounds like really at the end of the day, you are really truly listening and really truly connecting to who like a prospect or a buyer at a really different level to really make sure that you're putting them at ease.
I like how you said that because to me that is what's so important. And of course, that's part of your style too, Danielle, is that you do want to make people feel comfortable and at ease. Whereas again, that is not always true with all the styles. Other styles like the number 2 are very transactional and they truly just want to make the sale and go on to the next thing. Cute little story of one of my friends who's definitely the number 2 seller. He was helping to connect me with somebody and immediately just went to the business, asked the person, would you like to meet her? And then when the person said yes, suddenly it was, so how's the family? So he had to get business out of the way before he could be personal and sociable. And again, when you know someone's style, it, there they are. They are just the way you can predict.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Nancy Zare, for being here today and talking to us really about this compelling selling and really matching your communication to your buyer's style.
To your sales success.